Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Odinic School of Mysteries. My name is Bear. Welcome to number 11. Congratulations, you've made it this far. 11 is a very special number. You should really go look it up online. It's really cool. Anyway, so it is said that in the heathen community there is no sin or concept of sin. And this is not, though true in part, it's not true overall. So what do I mean by this? It is true, for instance, that the heathen community, sometimes called Asatru, or the religion, I guess you can call it, of the Norse, that we don't believe in sin in the same way that, let's say, the Christians do. The Christians believe that if you sin, you're not going to be able to go to heaven. You know, there's a huge price you have to pay in order to compensate for wrongdoing. In that sense, that is true. That the heathens don't have that kind of worldview. It is not true, however, at least in the mystery scroll tradition side of the heathen community, that there is very strong moral beliefs. There's very strong moral beliefs. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of talk about morality in a way that is probably not quite what you've heard of before. Right? And this is usually how these videos start. I start off saying, this isn't like anything you've heard, probably. So, you know, as my friend would say, buckle up! And I also, you know, I'm still not feeling very great. I'm still a little fuzzy. So I hope that, you know, you bear with me as I push through. So yeah, sin is an interesting thing. The way that sin is viewed in the mysteries is different than the way it is viewed to the general population. I should say, before we go on, that there's some definitions we should go over. The word exoteric. You've probably heard of the word esoteric before. But the word exoteric means outside of. That's where we get the word exterior from, or exoskeleton. It's a concept that means that whatever this thing is, if it's a skeleton and it's an exoskeleton, it's a skeleton that's on the outside. Interior means kind of basically a building, and exterior means outside of the building. So a lot of the doctrine that's given to the masses, I should say all the doctrine that's given to the masses, is exoteric. Exoteric. It is the knowledge that is outside of the walls of the temple. Most people in aggregate, I'm not saying everyone is this way. It's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying people in aggregate are not very bright. I don't want to, I know that sounds across as really condescending, and I don't want it to sound condescending, but there's really no way around it, at least in terms of a descriptor. So when we're, put it this way. So when we're children, right? My son is 2.5, and he wants to climb the bookcase. I tell him, don't climb the bookcase, and he would say, why? And I'll say, well, you'll pull the bookcase over on yourself, and then he'll do it anyway. He doesn't believe me. He doesn't believe that the bookcase will fall. He's not at that. He doesn't have forethought yet. He's still only 2. That part of his brain hasn't developed. And so, you know, I'll say, no, the bookcase is going to fall. And he'll say, no, it won't. And so, you know, I could sit there, right? And if I wanted to, I could say, all right, son, 2-year-old son, there's a thing called gravity. There's a thing called leverage. There's a thing called forward momentum. There's a thing called mass. You know, and when you, I could draw out a very fancy set of numbers that says, you know, you are 30 pounds plus this amount of force of leverage plus this mass plus this amount of momentum, and the bookcase will fall. You know, his eyes will just like glaze over. He doesn't know what I'm talking about, you know? And so ultimately, like when you're dealing with young kids, you have to say, just don't do it. Because dad said so. Just stop what you're doing. Just don't do it. And so that is sort of what happens when we're dealing with a massive population. You have to give them rules. You don't have to, it's better not to get into the weeds. It's just saying, okay, don't steal, that's bad. Don't murder, that's bad. Don't, you know, rob your friend's house, that's bad. So we give these to the population so that, you know, they know what not to do. But that doesn't really make them a moral population. It just says that if you do this or else. Like even in a huge population in the religious communities, even still, if you ask them why you shouldn't steal, they'll say, well, God told me to. God said not to steal, so I just don't do it. Or, you know, if you approach someone and said, okay, if 100% you knew that you would not get caught, there would be no consequences, no jail time, no one would ever find out, would you steal a TV from Walmart? You just walk in, pick up the TV you want, and walk out. Would you do it? A lot of people would. If they knew 100% they wouldn't get caught, a lot of people would do that. So, just like my son, me simply saying, don't do something, you know, don't climb on the bookcases, he's still going to try and climb the bookcase, right? Because he doesn't understand the reasoning behind it. But that doesn't mean there isn't any reasoning behind it. Just because we have a list of bad things not to do doesn't mean that we're trying to ruin anyone's fun. It doesn't mean that God is trying to ruin anyone's fun. It doesn't mean that the gods are trying to ruin anyone's fun. There's specific reasons why you don't do certain things. So when you're dealing with an exoteric knowledge, we're talking about like the 10 Commandments that are given to a general population. That's what they're there to serve. That's what they're there to do, is they're there to give a basis, at least a working basis of what right and wrong is. Right. Even if the population doesn't understand what's right and wrong, they still have something to work with. Which brings me to my next point. And this is when we start crossing the bridge a little bit from the exoteric knowledge, the wisdom that's given to the masses, into the esoteric knowledge. The esoteric knowledge of morality, where you have to, it's not just enough to be given a list of things that are right and wrong. And, you know, people who aren't really moral people will find workarounds anyway. You know, like, well, technically it's not stealing if I get someone else to steal for me, right? Right? So, there's still people who, though they're technically following the rules, they're still finding ways of breaking them. So, when we start crossing the bridge from the exoteric, you start moving your way into the esoteric. And esoteric means the hidden, knowledge. The hidden knowledge. It's the knowledge that exists inside the walls of the temple. It's the stuff that's held by the priests and the initiates and the mystery schools. The very few people who ever get to be admitted and trusted with bigger and more elaborate information. Most of what we do, like I said this over and over again, you got to learn to think. You got to learn to use your brain. You got to work out problems. Because the truth is complicated. The truth isn't a yes or no answer. The truth isn't just a list of 10 things. It's not a this means that equation. Okay? So and that's kind of a misconception that people have. That you say, okay, well, the mystery schools, they have all the secret knowledge on how to bend the universe to their will. Well, I mean, I guess if you kind of squint and look at it, maybe that you can kind of come to that conclusion. But really what it is a knowledge of law. Of the natural laws that govern the universe. And laws are complicated. There's causes and effects to everything. And so, when you step into the mystery school system, you're no longer given a set of just do's and don'ts. You're given a concept to work with. So, a concept. So, a whole umbrella, a whole way. You're given a key. You're given a key. You're given a small piece of information that when you place over top of your life or creation or whatever, it allows you to see the true pattern that exists behind it. Right? Those are called keys. And I know it's probably confusing, but for those who have the ears to hear, let them hear. So, let's go into this. Just we'll ease into this, right? So, there's a long list of things that are bad. So we said theft. That's bad. Murder is bad. Assault is bad. Breaking into someone's house is bad. Capturing someone and putting them in a cage is bad. Rape is bad. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of things that are bad, right? There's a long laundry list of things that are bad. What if I told you that there's only one evil in the universe? Just one. There's one evil in the universe. Theft. Theft. Theft is the one evil in the universe. Why do I say theft? I can steal from you, which is stealing. I can steal your life, which is murder. I can steal your freedom and put you in a cage. I can steal your consent by raping you, among lots of things that a rape is. Or you're stealing your power, all kinds of other stuff. I can steal your money, and call it taxes. I can, you could just go on and on and on and on and on and on, right? As a fun intellectual exercise right now, you could pause the video if you need to. Try and think of one evil thing, one sin, if you will, that doesn't result in theft, that isn't ultimately a theft of someone else's things. I can threaten you, steal your peace of mind. I can threaten you, steal your freedom, your free will. Right? I could assault you and steal your well-being. Your healthy. I could punch you in the face and steal your healthy face. Try, you know, it's just a fun exercise. You know, try and think of something that isn't theft, ultimately. And so that's a key. All evil is theft. So now you have something more than is just a list of things. So if I approach a situation, and if I know that I'm going to have to interact with it in some way, if the thing that I'm about to do results in a theft, therefore, I know that's bad. And this is where a lot of the heathen community gets upset. And, you know, I get it. But a lot of it comes from the Vikings. People love the Vikings. But people forget that most of Norse culture wasn't the Vikings. The word Viking literally means going pirating. But that's as exact as its literal mean. It's literal meaning. So to go Viking means to go pirating. It's a bit like, and because the Vikings were so popular, and everyone thinks they're so badass, you know, they became kind of the throw-all term for the Norse people. And so it's a little bit like saying that all of America, the American culture, everything America is about, from our hamburgers to our worldview to our religion, is the Navy. The Navy people, they love their hamburgers, and they love, you know, and their wedding ceremonies go like this. See what I mean? And so people take this idea of these highly immoral group of people, and they say, well, the Vikings were stealing from people, so therefore all of society believed this. Well, that's just simply stupid. Sorry, that is not the way to think about it. All right. So all evil is theft. All evil ultimately is theft. And then you start getting into some really interesting territory from this. And you start getting into kind of some moral pickles. Because what happens is you start applying this to things, and it makes for some inconvenience. I'm going to say right off the bat. You know, things like taxation and all that kind of stuff, you start running it through the theft test, and you go, oh man, some of these things that I never really thought about and took for granted are kind of iffy. You know, damn it. You know, what am I going to do now? And I'm not going to tell you how to solve that problem. That's on you to figure out how you solve that problem. But, you know, there's some things like that we just take for granted. We just take for granted that, you know, this is just the way it is. But when it really comes down to it, and you run things through the theft test, that you go, oh crap. now I have some serious work to do to figure out how I'm going to approach this problem. But there's kind of a subsection of that same idea of the theft test. The ancients, especially the mystery schools. This is more of a province of the people who exist within the mysteries. The priest classes and those sorts of people. It's the concept of the self-theft. Self-theft. You probably want to ask me, Bear, how does one steal from himself or herself? That is a good question. It is possible. A very classic example would be suicide. That's a self-theft. One of the biggest self-thefts, one of the biggest ones, is ignorance. And probably shocks you a little bit. Ignorance is considered a self-theft. in the mystery school tradition. And that's because, well, it'll make more sense if you understand that there's actually, that the way the English language, in all of its glory, I rag on it all the time, it's actually not a very great language. There's a lot of things that are left behind. So we use ignorance as kind of a catch-all term for just not knowing something. But we end up using ignorance wrong, the word ignorance wrong. There's actually two different kinds of not knowing of something. There's the concept of nescience. Nescience. I'll put it in here, most likely, so you can see it. It's a weird word. And you have ignorance. Nescience is the concept of not knowing something because either the information is physically unavailable to you, or it's you don't have the consciousness required to understand it. Right. So we talked earlier about my son playing on the bookshelves. On the bookshelves. My son is nescient. My son is nescient of the natural laws in which he's playing with. Because ultimately that's what he's doing. He's climbing the bookshelves and there's natural law that is an underlying thing. He's bringing laws to bear that will crush him under a bookshelf. Gravity, leverage, momentum, all of those things. He's not sitting, but because of his nescience, because he doesn't know, he's going to bring about terrible consequences upon himself. Right? That's nescience. Ignorance is different. Ignorance has the root word ignore in it. Ignorance. Ignorance is knowledge that is available to you, that you can know, but you willfully choose not to. And that's considered self-theft. And, you know, I get this all the time, that they say, well, I can't know everything, and people get all stressed out. It's not really quite you don't want to take it too far to the extremes. Right? Clearly, I'm never going to learn how to build a rocket ship. I could put in the time and effort to learn how to build a rocket ship. Which is why I'm ignorant of building rocket ships. The information is available to me, but I choose not to do it. This is more of a law, though technically still sinful to the greater population. Right? It is considered a sin to those who know better. And it specifically applies to sacred knowledge, the laws of God, symbology, the kinds of things you're supposed to learn in the mystery school systems. So, I don't want to freak you out. So another set of self-thefts are you've heard the 7 deadly sins, right? Classic example of self-thefts. Gluttony is a self-theft. You eat so much that you make yourself sick and you hurt yourself. Sloth, right? You are so lazy. You're so lazy that you hurt yourself. And I don't actually remember all of them. I feel like sexual... isn't promiscuity one of the 7 deadly sins? I don't remember. But that's another one. Where you have so much sex that it hurts yourself. You get diseases and all kinds of other things. So the self-thefts were the big deals. Because you have the big one. The big one is ignorance. Right? That is the number one big bad first rule. If you're going to join the mysteries, you're not allowed to be ignorant. That is just, you're not allowed to do it. It's the first sin, if you're to call it that, of the mysteries. So, it takes a special kind of ignorance to steal from yourself. So it's kind of a double whammy. Not only are you super ignorant, which is already bad, but you're so ignorant that you manage to steal from yourself. And so there's kind of a, it's just, I don't know how to put it. It's just really bad. Right? It's just really bad. That's the kind of stuff that really gets you in trouble. So, especially if you already know better. Which is why knowledge is sometimes considered dangerous, because once you know something, then you're accountable for it. So listen to me at your own risk. Congratulations, you're not allowed to be ignorant anymore. You're welcome. So, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the next point. But there is another step. So, when you deal with when you are first initiated, we have this here. I use this all the time as an example. This is like the first three. We talked about the first three steps of Odin, which is the first three. If you're in masonry, it's called the Blue Lodge masonry. This is where most people are. Most people don't go up to the 33rd degree. They don't actually even progress past the 3rd degree. This is just for most people who are Masons. They live in here, right? The self-theft, or I should say the theft test, is given to initiates in this section of the world tree. This section of the world tree. When you start progressing above that, right? This is the. I should just. I'll get it out. I'll get it out. You forced me to. Okay, this here. So the theft test is given to you in here. So you have a philosophy. You have a key to help you function in the world. Once you start, the further you start climbing, though, that self-theft test, I keep saying self-theft, that theft test changes. And you start learning about things that start getting into more of a scientific side of things, such as vibration and waves. Again, I'm not going to stick with this for very long. I'm already at 27 minutes, but this is just a taste, all right? This is a taste of what's up here. Electricity, light, sound, and shapes. Shapes. Like squares and triangles and cubes and all of that are all the same thing. Numbers, light, sound, electricity, and shapes are all the same thing. They're just measured differently. They're just different ways of measuring the exact same phenomenon. As a person, as you're an electrical being. Even though that we're organic matter, the human body is organic matter, we're still run off of electronics. All the way your nerves work, the way your skin works, the way you get signals to your brain, all of that is run off of electronics. It's all run off of light and magnetism. They're all part of the same family of phenomenon. So, because light, sound, and electricity are all the same thing, you, as a person, give off a tone, a musical tone. You sing. Your body sings. Your spirit sings. You have a sound. You ring like a bell. And if you know the way that sound waves work, you have a sine wave. And so when you have waves, like you think of like a boat on the ocean, right? When you get hit with a wave that's at the wrong frequency, it kills you, right? It kills the wave and it brings you down. It brings all the energy that's already in the wave. It brings it down because it's using up all of its energy to to fight the onslaught of the way that isn't quite meshed. But so that's like what a sin is, right? This is what the concept of theft comes from. When if I punch you in the face, I'm ringing your bell, basically, and I'm ringing your bell with a very strong, dissonant sound wave. So so instead of having a nice, strong energy current, I disrupt that. And so now you're all over the place. You're using up all of your energy is being all used up by that wave that doesn't mesh, that doesn't resonate, that doesn't sing on the same frequency that you do. Which is why when you're with someone who has the wrong tone, we even sometimes talk about the tone of voice of somebody, but you've been around people who just exhaust you, right? That's kind of what happens, is that they are ringing at a different tone than you are, and that your frequency and their frequency are dissonant. Dissonant means that the waves don't complement each other the way they're supposed to, and so they butt. You start fight your sound and their sound start fighting with each other, and then it kills your energy. It brings you way down into a place you don't want to be. But when you're with someone who's a really good energy, who's complementary to your energy, it brings you up. It brings you more power. Complementary waves again, like just think of the waves behind a ship or something, like a pebble in a pond. When the waves are complement to each other, they actually the waves build on each other and start creating more power behind it. It raises you up. You become more powerful and you become stronger and you feel better. So, that's kind of essentially what we're dealing with here. So at the beginning, we say, don't steal because God says so. Because God can't go into, for most people, they can't go into all the same stuff that we just went into. Most people will not understand it. I mean, it seems pretty fair. I don't know, to me it doesn't seem too bad, but still, I mean, there's a lot of people who won't understand it. So the first set of things, don't steal, don't kill, don't hit people in the face, don't key your neighbor's car, blah, 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 blah. And then you have the second section, when you actually join the mysteries, right? Where it's like, okay, we could condense all of those into theft. Don't steal. You take that initial key that you learn, and as you take that key, you learn, and as you climb the hill, you kind of take that with you. And that same key is applied to energy fields, to sound, to electricity, and to polarity, and to all these other things that seem different but are actually the same. And then you get to grow and start learning that all the laws of the universe are actually, it's not just a religious idea to say don't do certain things. It's actually based on a scientific, measurable hypothesis. God says don't do something because he knows what he's talking about, but he can't explain to an ancient person all the laws of polarity, light, and sound, and all of that. But you get to learn that once you go into the mystery schools. So I feel like I'm done. I feel like there's something else I wanted to talk about in there. I don't remember what it is. I'm probably going to remember once I turn this off, and then it's going to drive me crazy. Oh well. Okay. And this is kind of where the mysteries, in my opinion, get fun. Because you start learning that all of these things that are associated with religion, with things we have to take on faith, and we just have to assume that God knows best. We actually get to start seeing these played out in actual measurable science. which is really a lot of fun. You probably didn't know that morality was a physical science. That you could pick up, a light reader or a phonograph. You could get it for free on your phone. You could pick up a phonograph on your phone, and a phonograph is like it takes sound and puts it into a picture form so you can see it. You could pick those up and you could see what I'm talking about, right? You could do that right now if you wanted to. So we'll probably get into more of what the differences between like the esoteric and exoteric is as we go. Those are good things to kind of keep in your head. That there's things that are kept for the elites. And there's things that are given to the general population. Congratulations, you're an elite now. You're an Illuminati, I guess. All right, my friends. I love you. And I hope you have a really great day. All right? Take it easy out there. Don't get sick like I did. All right. Bye-bye.